In the city of fire, dark streets with fire, orc fighter stands tall. He's ready for brawl. Armor gleams in moonlight. He's prepped for the fight. Let's sit through with might. Shadows blur in the night. Maybe rupture, feel his fury. Builds momentum, gets in hurry. With the cataclysm, ground will quake. Enemy stage dread as he ramps up his dread. Every swing he makes, the battlefield shakes. All the spikes shoot from the ground. Enemies fall all around. Shatter earth with a might bound. Maybe rupture, feel his fury. Builds momentum, gets in hurry. With the cataclysm, ground will quake. Enemies face dread as he ramps up his tread. Every swing he makes, the battlefield shakes. All the spikes shoot from the ground. Enemies fall all around. Shatter earth with a might bound. Maybe rupture, feel his fury. Builds momentum, gets in hurry. With the cataclysm, ground will quake. In the city of fire, dark streets with fire, orc fighter stands tall. He's ready for brawl. Armor gleams in moonlight. He's prepped for the fight. Let's sit through with might. Shadows blur in the night. Aim and roll. Maybe rupture, feel his fury. Builds momentum, gets in hurry. With the cataclysm, ground will quake. Ground will quake. This fire born ready to fight. Drive from sands all in the night. Armies clashing, shadows blend. Glory waits at battle's end. Ancient ruins witness fate. Warriors meet at heaven's gate. Echoes of the past now scream. Mystic staff will wander stream. God's spite star in darkened skies. Victory will claim Ready to serve, my lord.
Oh, somebody jumping in. Toxic Cape 3000 with a follow as soon as we start the show. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. So Flashy Swag says the center was all right. Yeah, the center was all right. You're right about that. That's a little flag football talk for some of my old teammates back in the day. Mike is not on. Mine isn't. Is it too loud? Virtek, can you say something? Virtek, you there? What? Hey, Virtek.
No, I don't hear you. I was trying to not interrupt you when you were speaking, but yeah, I don't hear anything. I heard you right before we went live, and then just nothing.
What? I didn't change anything.
Hold on.
We can hear you, by the way, just so you know.
Okay, there we go.
Did you find it?
I got you now.
Okay. All right. So everybody, Virtek from the Golden Feather Tavern. You want to tell the folks? I mean, in general, we all share the same audience, and I understand that. But just in case there's somebody's watching who hasn't heard of the Golden Feather, let them know who you are, what y'all do, all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Virtek from the Golden Feather Tavern. We cover basically everything happening in the community. A lot of folks will go through and they'll cover news specifically, and they'll do deep dives on news and deep dives on the techniques and stuff going on inside the game when gameplay comes around. But our big focus is on the community, like who's in it, what they're doing, what the community of Ashes of Creation is talking about via the forums, Reddit, Twitter, like any of the above. If people are talking about it, we want to bring it up and actually have it live talks, bring people into chat, bring people into the podcast, and just kind of discuss things out, hash it out, chit chat about things.
Okay, that's what you guys do. So you probably know this, but I don't know if my audience knows this, but I made my first video in January of 2021, and it did pretty well as far as the first video goes. And I had already released a second video, and I think Wandering Mist. Oh, Crypteria 777. Thank you for the follow. But Wandering Mist was on y'all's channel and mentioned, I guess, what I had said in the previous video that I'd made or something like that. And you guys were like, hey, let's get this new guy on. And no kidding, like I was running to my wife going, hey, I made it. The Golden Feather wants me on.
Oh my goodness, you're going to make me blush.
Yeah, so it was so funny. I thought, I was just like, oh my goodness, I'm killing it right off the bat. I'm already on the Golden Feather. And so that was pretty cool of you guys to have me on that early when I seriously had released, I think it was 2 videos at that point. So,
and you do good stuff. So you deserve to make it.
No, well, I appreciate that. I really do. So first off, before we even get going here, if any of you here are not following the Golden Feather Tavern on Twitch or YouTube, go do that now. Simple as that. Go do that now. Because they deserve it. And I want to tell you that I am in awe of you and Bree and what you guys have done, because over the last 2.5 years or so, because it was still, I kept trying to make content for about half a year after Alpha 1. I couldn't. I wanted to make content, and I could not force myself to do it, no matter what I did. And every Friday, Golden Feather Tavern went live every time. Didn't matter. Sometimes, there was times during some of the dry period, and you know what I'm talking about, when you were like scratching and clawing for 12 or 13 viewers, and you guys went live and you did it anyways. And I have just incredible respect for what you guys have done with your consistency over time. And so those of you who are watching who may not be following the Golden Feather, if that's what you're looking for, consistency, you want Ashes of Creation content and you want it delivered into your veins, liquefied and straight injected into your veins all the time, these guys right here are where you'll do it.
No, appreciate that. Yeah, that dry spell was crazy. And even we had doubts for a bit there. We were thinking like maybe we should just go down to like monthly or take a break. Everyone else is kind of tapping out for right now. No. We should keep doing something. I think we went down to every other week instead of weekly.
Yeah.
And then for I think a month or two, we did one a month. And then we went right back to it. We're like, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right doing one a month.
Yeah. It's time to get after it. And no, that's exactly right. It's time to go. And what's funny is other content creators who are out there right now, if you happen to be watching this, the time is now. The iron is hot. The iron is glowing orange right now. Get out your hammer and hit it. Okay? The time is now. I'm letting you guys know time is now. So if you're trying to do this, now's the time. Now is the time. And I'm seeing it on my own channel. As soon as I started making content again, man, it just started going again for the first time in a long time. So, but
yep, it's time to get in there.
Making content is not what this stream is about. This stream is about PvX and maybe in particular PvE, but also PvP and PvX in Ashes of Creation. And I know that you and I had like kind of a little back and forth where I was able to talk and you were in the chat. And so you can't really have a conversation in that way. And so it was just like, that it just doesn't work. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to jump on, talk to us about how you see PvX in Ashes of Creation. And as a Phoenix Initiative tester, you're actually in the game, so you're getting to see it. So what I want to do is I want you to put it in your words. I want you to tell me what your thoughts are on PvE, PvP, PvX in Ashes of Creation, the direction they're going, and where you think they should go. I want you to say it for yourself.
Oh man, that's such a complex topic, though. It's such a complex thing to define as quickly as even like a 20-minute thing, right?
Yeah.
But I would have to say, because I'm more than anything, I'm a vocal proponent of getting more PvE content into Ashes, more so than I would require it for myself.
Okay.
Because I do come from some of the older games that were literally, it's PV everything is what PvE stood for, like everything.
Ready
It's
to
other
serve,
players,
my
it's
lord.
yourself by making stupid decisions. It's the environment, it's going into just random dungeons, and there was no instancing for any of that stuff, so it was just you and everybody else was just there doing things. And it was really rough. And to be honest, that's kind of what I could see PvX being. As long as there's some form of the biggest thing I look for when I hear PvX being defined and touted as like the core feature of a game, right? To me, that means that PvP should impact PvE, right? And PvE should impact PvP.
Okay.
And I don't mean like accidentally, I mean directly. So, for instance, we're having a talk on with Lloyd. I was having a talk with him, and somebody else commented on it. And it's one of those things, like, you can name many instances, right, where you could be in a PvE combat situation in Ashes, and PvP can directly impact it, literally mow right through it, right? Destroy the whole thing, you get experience, debt, and everything out of it. But can you name a single instance where PvE can directly impact a PvP combat situation?
I mean,
I can't think of one that was announced. Like,
okay.
And by the way, not be interrupted by PvP. That's that's another core thing. Because PvE, fighting a raid boss in an open world dungeon, or a raid rather, PvP can run right through you, and you can't do anything PvE to stop them. You literally can't reverse and stop that. But you could do PvP in, say, a castle siege. And Steven had mentioned it a couple times before about that, the dragons, you can go and you can fight a dragon and win it for your side and all that, but PvP could run right over you and stop you from doing that. But there's nothing equatable there for PvE players.
Right.
So my big concern is keeping the PvE players hungry and desiring to interact with content.
Okay. Okay. Before you keep going there, I do want to thank Bree for subscribing, Lights for re-upping for their 7th month in a row. That is awesome. Thank you, sir. And Basil for following. So appreciate everybody who's interacting and all the chatters and all that stuff. So
Ready to serve, my
oh,
lord.
and how is Psychophobic just now following me on Twitch? This makes no sense.
Psycho Slacker.
I mean, dude was trying to get me into his guild. He wouldn't even follow me on Twitch. I mean, that's not how you do it. I'm just saying. No, thanks for the follow, Psycho. I appreciate it, buddy. So I think that you might be like at the very cutting edge of this conversation regarding PvX, PvE, PvP. Like you're the one, you seem to be the only PI tester who's like openly talking about stuff like, and it's a question that you asked me on the stream here a while back, and it really threw me. And the question was kind of what you just said. Name me a time when PvE can interrupt PvP. And I started really thinking about that. Like, and so one of the things that I tell my chat all the time, one of the things that I very much do is I attack my own ideas. I never just say, I've done it, I figured it out, my idea is right, and I'm never thinking about it again. I'm constantly attacking my ideas and trying to figure out, and that's for everything in life, right? And it's, yeah. I do one of those things where I'm like, well, you are interrupting PvP when you, let's say, chop down a whole bunch of trees during a node war, and then your team is able to go use those trees to build a catapult, and the catapult is the thing that pushes you over the edge. You know, like you are interrupting PvP, or you definitely affecting PvP. And I kept going, I'm not sure that that's interrupting. It's more like affecting, or node siege or whatever.
And that's also a game of checkers part to it too, right? So you are in a PvP environment doing a PvE. I mean, and it also depends on how you're defining PvE, because won't go down that rabbit trail, but there's been a lot of talks on, would you really define gathering as PvE, and why would you define it as PvE?
Yes.
I
was getting there.
By NPCs, but you also pass by players the entire time, and they might mow you down just as easily as a spider in the woods. But either way, if you exclude all that and you say, yes, that's a PvE activity in a PvP zone, but PvP can stop you from doing it. Therefore, it's not a direct, like, this can happen, but it's still PvP trumps it all. So it's really PvX.
Right. So kind of the conclusion that I came to when really thinking about this over the last whatever week and a half it's been, something like that, is something like, because they are two different things, PvP by its very nature is interrupting. That's what it is. And PvE is not. PvE is not, like, I couldn't even think of a real way to make PvE interrupt PvP in any kind of way that, like, makes sense within the context of the game. Can you, like, have you thought of an idea? Like, I want to be able to do this, that way it can do it? Either zone.
I mean, there's some things, like, honestly, even with the Node Wars, that demonstration that was going on, they're kind of going in a decent direction, I think, which is they're introducing some PvE type goals. But the only problem is they're PvE type goals that aren't really going to attract a PvE crowd to take care of them, because it's, you kill a couple mobs in the woods. Mm-hmm. Well, the PvP crowd, while they're mowing through everybody else, could just as easily go, okay, and I got to kill an NPC. It's going to take me 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. It's going to take me 30 seconds to kill a player. This is easy. Mm-hmm. No problem. Like, I don't even have to sweat. It's actually easier. I can just right through it. No worries. Okay, well,
hold
then
on
there's
one
the
second. Hold on one second. Moon Man just came in and rated us with 8 viewers, man. Thank you. I appreciate the raid, man. Just so you guys know, next Sunday, same time, 7 o'clock Central Time, I'm going to have Moon Man on, and we're going to have an interesting discussion. So just letting everybody know. And for those of you who just came in, if you're not aware, my name is Zillan. I make YouTube and Twitch content for Ashes of Creation. This is Virtek from the Golden Feather Tavern, and he also makes Twitch and YouTube content. And go follow him, or I'll kill you. Moving on, Virtek, go ahead.
I love the casual threat just slipped in there. But yeah, so I mean, then they added in. I mean, not and then they did it at the same time, but and then there is the you can go and you can mine these resources.
Right.
Okay. Again, is that a PvE thing or is that a PvP thing? Is it just an economy game? Is it considered life skills? Like, because I want to also be clear that I'm also looking at PvE combat specifically. And if you want to get more specific, I'm looking at PvP elder game combat, because if you look at PvE content that's combat related while you're leveling up, I mean, that's questing, right? Well, the direct relation to that is PvP open world combat, which just exists, and it's a thing. And if you were to tell a PvP player, like, there's your PvE content right here, you can open world, that's all you get though,
Right.
you'd be really furious.
Right.
Like, that PvP player would be really upset. Like, it's almost insulting at that point. So to say, like, well, you have questing, that's your PvE content, it's kind of insulting. Like,
Right,
no.
right.
I wanted to do something when I get to the elder game, and I want it to feel like it's purposeful. I want to feel like it's meaty, and I don't necessarily want to be interrupted by a PvP player every single time, because that's not PvX, that's PvP with a PvE feeder. They're distracted over here doing this thing,
Right.
and so PvP attacks them, and so it's really just PvP with a distraction is what it is.
Okay, so I'm with you, and I think for the most part we're in the same boat as far as how we feel about this. Like, there isn't really for number. I turned myself down, by the way, so hopefully it should be better now. I'm trying to, like, find the volume. Also, Moonman, thank you for the sub, your own sub, and then gifting 5 subs. That's awesome, man. I appreciate it. I turned myself down too much. Okay, it's balanced now. I gotta turn it back up. But anyways, I think that you and I are more or less in the same place. So what I want to try to do is I want to try to figure out what. So okay, I'm a hardcore PvE raider. I spent almost a decade in Star Wars: The Old Republic, leading a progression raiding guild. God, I was on at one time. I led 2 different teams. I was on 2 other teams. Like, it was 6 nights a week I was raiding, and 2 of those nights I was raiding, like, as soon as one raid team finished, the next team started, and like, it was crazy. Okay, so I'm a hardcore raider, and that is what I have found that I enjoy in games. But I also understand that the risk of PvP happening in any time puts value and meaning into the game that can't otherwise exist. Literally does not exist in other games. So what I want to try to do, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show today, I want to figure out how can we find a way to make PvE. We're workshopping it right now. We're theory crafting right now. How do we have PvE, so high-end PvE, end-game, elder game, however you want to put it, PvE content that affects the world in a way that PvP does, or affects PvP directly, or something like that. That's where I want to try to get to, because now, before I let you go, I want to make this very clear for chat, because I always have to make sure this is clear. Make sure this is clear for chat. I'm not trying to introduce no scope creep. No scope creep here. Expansion. What we're talking about is first big update, expansion, like something down the line. I just want the game to come out with the stuff they promised first. Okay, no scope creep. Okay, go. Well, how can we do this?
Okay, so here's something that's not scope creep, because I can talk later about an idea I had that would involve some scope creep well, no, because you said expansion stuff. So yeah, I'll drop it in here. Okay. So one of the first ideas I had, right? Everybody agrees that you would like to be able to gauge your performance in one way, shape, or form. You'd like to practice things and stuff. Not everybody agrees with needing meters and stuff like that to support that. But one of the ideas I had was, okay, so you can get a guild hall, right? Well, what if there was an instanced area of the guild hall where you could earn, let's call it magic relics that you could plug in, and it would almost be like a simulated boss. It would summon a version of a boss after you have fought it a certain number of times out in the wild. You've collected pieces, you've collected experience, you've filled up, say, a magic recording device of some sorts from like a scientific node, and you recorded enough stats, and now you can plug this into a magic relic and drop it in, and now you can practice on that boss. You can test your damage output, your healing, your all that, but it gains you nothing. Not even titles, not even like cosmetics, not anything. But you can practice on it, and you can gauge your performance against it. Well, to take it a step further, what if, and this one wouldn't involve hardly any work to get done. This is something I actually just thought of fairly recently, and I'm kind of hoping it would be a thing.
Okay.
And that is, raids are already set up. Dungeons are already set up. They're already created. They're already going to be ready to go. We just have to unlock them and get into them, right? Well, what if they made a version of those instanced that performed almost exactly the same way it does out in the real world? The only thing you get are cosmetic items, titles, achievements, leaderboards. It'll have competitive PvE aspects that are mirrored by competitive PvP arenas. It'll give people the ability to practice these encounters without getting experience debt, which, by the way, every death you get gives you experience debt, which also reduces your combat performance. So if you fight a raid boss once and you die, you're going to perform worse the next time around, so you may not want to come right back to it until you gain that experience back. If it's 5% of maximum level, you might be at it for a good 2 hours before you can try the boss again. So, there's that. So stuff it in an instance thing, let people practice and get just some cosmetics and whatnot. If they practice it enough, maybe that's how they can earn their data on the boss to unlock it in their inside their guild hall. But then if they want that PvE to have an actual impact, well, they just spent a week practicing it inside this instanced area that maybe you had to unlock it through guild powers or something, through node advancements, like a scientific node advancement, something in there. And now they can go out into the open world and hunt that boss down, because now they've perfected their moves, their coordination, exactly what's going to be happening, how to go about it. Like they've created specific callouts for any random actions that are going to occur, and they can actually go and get those super valuable materials to build and craft upgraded armor and weapons.
So that's, I mean, I love all of that stuff. That's all, for the most part, I think would be fine. Especially if you were trying to bring in that competitive PvE scene, which I actually think that Ashes of Creation has a chance, because of how freaking awesome the combat looks, to suck in that PvE, the competitive PvE crowd, but not with what I suspect PvE is going to look like in this game. But my question for you is, how does anything you just described interrupt PvP?
Well, see, that's the thing. That doesn't necessarily interrupt PvP. What it does is it allows PvE players to have an edge over other groups out there. They put in the practice, they put in the time, so now they might have a better chance of getting that boss down before somebody else gets to it. If there was something that they had to do, some quest line that they had to complete, some challenging boss that would only be accessible by going through the quest line, that would actually unlock the instance. Something along those lines, where it could actually be unlocked, but you had to put some time and effort into it. And then they get access to this thing that will have them be more prepared, so they can literally just run in and knock it out. They know they can knock it out, and all these other people are fussing around with getting their experience debt back because they just died 3 times to the same thing. It'll give them more practice, is really what it would be. And that's really just trying to come up with a middle ground, because there's so many people. There's even a comment, AV Gaming was saying, "I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of this idea. It's like a noob zone." Well, when talking about a game that is massively PvP oriented, you're trying to help give some PvE people something to do and a reason to come back to it. Sometimes you gotta go with a middle ground approach, because right. Stevens only said that there would be experience debt being suspended for organized PvP. But why is there not for organized PvE?
Yeah,
I honestly don't know.
I will say, just in general, I'm going to catch up with chat in just a minute, guys. I don't want to ignore the chat, but I do want to say that Steven talks a lot about how other games seem like they're built and PvP is tacked on. Right? It's an afterthought. It's just like, oh, some arenas, here you go. And I think that is because World of Warcraft was massively successful, and every MMO went, oh, well, let's just carbon copy that, but put a Star Wars skin on it, or a Lord of the Rings skin on it, or whatever. And I will say that from my feeling just watching, and of course I'm not in the game, so I don't know. My feeling just watching is that Ashes of Creation is very much a PvP game with PvE tacked on. It's kind of the opposite. We'll see. Maybe they have got great ideas, but I haven't heard about them hiring a raid design team. We all check the hiring list all the time to kind of like figure out where they are in development or whatever. I've never seen like raid design, raid team lead, anything like that. Now maybe they have somebody already, or somebody has multiple titles. Who knows? But I'm just saying, it doesn't seem like heavily tuned, really difficult PvE is in the cards for Ashes, at least not at launch. Maybe that's somewhere down the road. I want to respond a little bit to this chat. I saw Spicy Texan Peppers, which is a great name. It says, how can you say there isn't enough PvE when PI testers haven't even left the first zone? What is this based on? It's really just based on viewing what they're doing, what they're talking about. My experience with other games that have, for lack of a better term, non-consensual PvP during PvE, it's based on that. Also, Virtek is a PI tester, so he's kind of got a little bit of info on how all this is looking. So that's what it's based on, but it's also a title to get people to click, because that's what content creators do. So look at it that way. I gotcha.
Yeah. Fair enough.
We've literally stated it's based on what we know so far, Spicy. That's what Noobtastic just said. And a bunch of people have jumped in since we start, so I just want to let you guys know I'm Zillin. I make Ashes of Creation content on YouTube and Twitch. This is Virtek from the Golden Feather Tavern. He and his lovely wife, Bree, also make Ashes of Creation content on YouTube and Twitch. So follow us at all the places and do all the things. Josh Wyatt says, I'm sorry, but every idea that makes PvE safe sucks, because safe PvE sucks. Full stop. Josh, I will just let you know that is an opinion, sir. I love hard, really hard. One mechanic wipes the whole group. You have to have 8 or 16 or 20, how many ever people it is, be absolutely perfect for 19 consecutive minutes in order to clear the boss. I love that stuff. So clearly World of Warcraft is proof that there are millions of people who love that stuff. So while I see your point, and in some ways I even see what you're saying, that is an opinion, sir. That is an opinion. Like a noob zone. Yep, I saw that. Attunement is really important. I agree. Spicy Texan Pepper says you were talking about attuning to the boss so that you would have an understanding of how to kill the boss a little better. Isn't that is it New World that has attunement? What's the game where you had to spend a lot of time? Oh, WildStar. WildStar was the game you had to spend 3 months attuning the raids before you could do them. That was some insanity.
I loved it.
You loved it? See, there
Yes.
you go. There you go. Spicy Texan Pepper says, I hope Ashes is different. We all hope it's different. We all hope it's different. You can organize PvP. You just need to hire protection. You need to be able to understand there will be people in your guild that probably will PvP on your behalf. Are you wanting to play as a single player or in a guild? And that's a great point. And I think that's one of the better arguments is get a friend. Did you respond to that already?
Yeah, I actually have a direct response to that because it's one of the most infuriating responses known to man.
Okay.
So I have concerns about PvE content because I can't just go PvP, or PvE rather. I have concerns about PvE content because I can't just go PvE. And the argument is always, well, are you playing by yourself or are you going to play with a guild? Well, of course I'm playing with a freaking guild. Are you?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Are you? No, yeah. I'm not playing by myself. I'm not going to be a solo player going out there I can conquer a raid, guys. No, of course I'm playing with a guild.
Right.
That argument is kind of old and tiring at this point.
Okay.
And the other part is, so I'm complaining about PvE not being able to impact PvP, and we need to get some more activity for PvE players to be psyched and wanting to do content. Telling a PvE player that you got to go out and you got to fuss against PvP players to do your content is not a good way to get them to want to do content. So telling them they not only have to fight against PvP players, but also hire other PvP players so that they can go and try to do PvE content, because who knows, somebody might have killed it. It's open world. They might not even see that boss exist ever. They might not ever see it exist.
Right.
So then they also have to bring PvP buddies, so they have to pay them money. And if they're in your guilds, they're not just going to always be a bodyguard all the time. You got to pay them something, right? Which means you got to go do something to give them money in a way. Even if they're in your guild, they literally are not going to go broke and pay money to help you. So
Right.
you have to provide them something for them to take care of you.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
Right.
Guild members should
Right.
depend on each other and help each other up and lift each other up so that everybody is enriched the entire way. But those specific 2 takes right there, I've heard them time and again, and they're worn out.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, the chat's going today. You guys you're really into this topic. So I have an idea for competitive PvE, and I think actually the very first time I ever laid this idea out was on the Golden Feather Tavern. But I think that every stage 5 node, so because there's only going to be 5 stage 6 nodes, okay? So that's not very many. But every stage 5 node, so what would there be, like 20, 25 maybe, should have either a animal racing arena, a horse racing arena for lack of a better term, but it's any animal, and the local, or even outside the local, but the animal husbandrists can show up and enter their horses or their animals into this race. And of course, you could be really fast on the straight
Ready
parts,
to
but slow in
serve,
the
my
corner,
lord.
that sort of thing. Absolutely, Taco with a follow. Thank you very much. Love the name. So a horse racing thing, a PvP arena or a PvE arena, and again where the animal husbanders could make the animals that the PvEers are fighting, and players that it should literally be on the node. This arena should be on the node proper, and people that live in the node or anyone could come and pay money. That
Ready
money
to
goes
serve,
to
my lord.
the node, to the coffers of the node, and then you can watch the PvP, watch the arena, watch all of that stuff. Now that doesn't interrupt PvP, and I'm not sure that we're going to come up with one that will interrupt PvP. I don't think we will, because that's not the nature of PvE. But that would give the PvE crowd something to do. It affects the nodes. It affects how everything goes. And then, of course, like I've been saying, no gear or no top level gear out of this. Cosmetics, titles, mounts, that kind of crap. No gear. So that way you still cannot get the best gear without risking yourself. You have to be at risk. Whatever you're doing, if you have a possibility of getting the best gear, I think you have to be at risk of dying. And I think Steven would very much agree with that. That's kind of his motto. So what do you think about something like that?
Yeah, well, to be honest, and this is a question I think I posed to you also, is what's the difference between dying to an NPC and dying to a player?
Well, there should be no difference.
Risk-wise, what's the difference? So does the threat or the risk taken always have to be another player killing you?
Yes.
Why?
Because there's no risk whatsoever of me dying in PvE.
Well, you just said there was no difference.
Well, I didn't quite follow what you were saying. So like on a raid boss, yeah, I might die or whatever. But like if I'm running around in the open world, it's too easy. Like I'll tell you, in Star Wars: The Old Republic, I had a conversation. I was talking about how much I don't like pets, and just in general in MMOs, I'm not a fan of pets. And somebody was like, "Oh my God, how did you play SWTOR for 10 years without pets?" Because SWTOR has the little story characters that follow you around. Basically, they're pets, like nonstop, constant pets. And it dawned on me, I don't fucking use the pets. They're off. I have them turned off all the time. I mollywop all the content in the game, single player content, with no pet, no problem, never a concern whatsoever. I am at no risk, none of dying in PvE and SWTOR. None. So it's like...
Well, SWTOR is a whole other game, unless you go
Sure
into a
is.
PvP arena, which, like, people don't do that because it's not competitive. So people don't go into PvP. But no, SWTOR is a whole other ball game. That's like saying, like, what risk is there to playing Neopets? Like, SWTOR is cake mode when it comes to PvE stuff.
Right,
even.
it is.
Unless you go into like the super hard raids, in which case it's a little bit more difficult.
Yes.
But that's actually one of the reasons that my guild and I stopped playing within 6 months of launch, because they weren't making it more competitive. They weren't
Right.
making it more difficult and challenging.
Yes.
So to this day, it remains one of the best single player story games, but the multiplayer is just not there for anything.
But I should
It is-
clarify, I have zero chance in dying in WoW. In such like WoW, New World, you name it. I mollywop single player PvE content. Like no concern whatsoever. Planet Dwarf says, well, you're trash like me. Are you dying in PvE content? Planet Dwarf, are the spiders
Yeah.
in the Highwomen Hills killing you? Come on, man, you got to get good. So to me, that's the difference. An actual player is a way bigger threat than an NPC. Like that's inarguable. A player is a way bigger threat than an NPC.
So yeah. So how about the other suggestion that's been put out there, which is being able to lock the boss rooms?
I'm not opposed to locking boss rooms to some degree. To some degree. Like, if you fight all the way down there and are, because if here's the thing. If you make it where you can lock the boss rooms, whatever mechanic by which you lock the boss room, whether it be getting in the room and pushing a button or whatever, that's just going to become the new thing people fight over. Instead of fighting over the boss, you're going to fight over locking the boss room. So for me, that's for the most part.
There's a big difference.
There is.
But
For the
there's
most
a
part, I'm
huge
fine with
difference.
that because then you get to go do the boss unmolested, essentially.
Yeah, but then because the thing that we talked about in one of the Golden Feather days was if you could go through a raid, right, and you're collecting some form of anything, it could be rocks,
Ready
good
to
gems,
serve, my
pieces of
lord.
metal, keys, whatever. You collect enough of them of certain types, of certain grades, and you can go in and you can lock the boss room for a certain amount of time. Or you can lock it literally one time, you wipe and you're done. Or you can get a certain grade of materials where you can lock it for 15 minutes and you spawn within the room every time you die.
Right.
And when you lock the boss room, it gets rid of experience debt. And the reason I say that is because Steven's put out there, again, I forget the exact phrasing, but he's basically said he wants arenas to be a safe, easy to access place for people to go and practice their builds and to compete against one another. So there's no experience debt and there's no corruption, there's no nothing. So organized PvE, I feel, should be the same way. If you can fight through that area, gather those pieces to lock that boss room door, you pay for it by expending those pieces of keys or whatever instead of selling them on the auction house, then you should be able to sit in there and try to farm a boss for 15 minutes without facing experience debt and the stat reduction that comes along with it.
Yeah.
And then, hey, you had your 15 minutes. It took you 3 days to gather the stuff or whatever. It took you the whole day of your guild farming materials to get in there, but you had your 15 minutes and now you got to go try it again. Go start farming materials again. See, run at it tomorrow.
I really do like the idea of, you could do this in a number of different ways. The idea of actually having to fight your way to different rooms in a dungeon to gather up all the pieces that you would need in order to make the lock, and then you can lock yourself in. So then, yeah, you absolutely have put yourself at risk the whole way through. That's not a bad idea. Having a button that's has to be channeled for like 10 or 12 seconds or something like that just in the boss room would make it where you're fighting over the button. But it's not nearly as dangerous as you're in the middle of getting your ass kicked by a boss and a bunch of fucking yahoos come in behind and wipe your group out. So that's a whole different thing. So I'm fine with either of those. I do think that, and I could be wrong about this, and I'm just trying to spitball here. And by the way, Spicy Texan Peppers, thank you for the follow. I missed that earlier. I'm in Texas also, by the way, just FYI. I kind of think that the absolute best,
Ready to serve, my lord.
best shit should come from bosses where the entire time you're fighting that boss, you're at risk. I know that may not be a popular way, but coming from Ultima Online, whenever I'm thinking about these games, I'm thinking back to Ultima Online and pure addiction that I had to that game. And whenever I really, really break it all down, when I think about it, I'm really trying to give like I said, I challenge my own ideas. When I really think about it, it is the risk. It's the risk that provides meaning and value to what you're doing in the game. And so that's where I would like to see like the best. And to be clear, I know Steven said the crafters make the best shit. So I would like whatever needs to drop to then give to crafters to make the best shit. should drop from something where you're at risk while you're fighting the boss. Spicy Pepper
Oh.
Pepper Texan with us. Subscribe. Thank you. Spicy Texan Pepper.
And sorry, Mr. Noobtastic, I caught your comment. I didn't see everything that was said before it, but yeah, that's pretty much it. PvE mains aren't all about avoiding PvE. They just want some content that challenges them, gives them a reason to do it, and they have a reasonable expectation of being able to approach it and access it. Those are the key things there. They want to be able to have access to it, which means that they're able to reach it sometime in their life in the game, and it's not going to be slain 15 times before they can reach it, and then they'll see it one time, they'll wipe, have to go recharge their experience, and never see it again because the node gets destroyed.
Right.
So that's also like with the. So here's actually a couple questions that I still have in the bank for this, like to get your opinion on this. One being the system that Intrepid's developing to make the raid bosses get harder, the better you perform earlier on, right? How do you think that's going to be tracked? How do you think that's going to be achievable? How do you think it's going to be engaged at all in any way ever?
Okay, so the very first thing that's got to happen is I'm sweating under all these lights. Okay, so now, so
First things first.
yeah, first things first. Okay, I got to tell you, and I mentioned that we talked about this a little bit on stream last week, I think. That system is in the pantheon of probably 40 things that Steven kind of half mentioned in an offhanded way one fucking time. He talked about that system one time like 3 years ago. So I'm kind of like, did someone come to Steven and be like, hey, I got this really cool tech. Check out this tech we're creating. And so Steven, and then they went live, and so it was like it happened to be on his mind, so he thought about it and talked about it. You know what I'm saying? And then he was talking to Jeff Bard or somebody else, a few days later, and they're like, dude, we can't use that because of this, and this, and he goes, oh crap. Now I could be totally wrong about that. I'm just saying he's only ever talked about it the one time that I can remember. That said, so obviously the speed at which you kill the boss could make the next bosses harder. They could just have tiers. If you kill the boss in 10 minutes, it stays the same. If you kill it in 11 minutes, it gets easier. 12 minutes, it gets even easier. 9 minutes, it gets harder. Like, you could do it that way, right? You could also do it with, like, go ahead.
Now, in response to that, because, actually, no, go ahead and finish your
Okay.
other way of doing it.
And
Robert,
this gets
sorry.
back to Burns' video on data tracking. They have way more data tracking for this game than any MMO that's ever existed before. Like, they are going to really be able to dig into the data. So you could also do it on, number one, total team DPS. Because they don't have to give us that information for them to have that information, right? I don't want them to give us that information. They can have it. You can also do it by total team, like, damage taken. Like, that's actual skill, right? You're performing the mechanics, killing the boss, and not taking as much damage. You're performing the mechanics correctly or whatever. So, like, I could see where you could do a couple of different ways, just tracking a couple of, like, just total team mechanics to determine how effectively you took down that boss, and then make the next boss more or less complicated based on that. But that could only work in instance raiding. I don't know how that would work in an open dungeon.
Exactly. See, that's exactly what I was going to say, is let me throw a hardware store with the wrenches and all that and say, if they track it, because you said you've done hardcore, like actual hardcore, like doing, hard mythic dungeons, doing mythic raids and stuff like that. So, it can be very difficult to do that stuff. You're going to spend literally 2-3 months worth of 4 hours a night, 3 times a week to be able to beat a raid. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of time to devote. So that's a lot of dedication. Now, if you're going to take and scale that down because you're dealing with open world PvP at the same time, and Steven has said that this is not going to be your, bleeding edge raid type content with difficulty.
Sure.
So there's that as well. But even with all that, it's open world and there's experience debt to worry about. Do you really think anybody would make it from one boss to the next, to the next, to the next, even as few as 4 bosses in a raid? As one solid group who's also worried about experience debt and fighting against a boss that in theory is going to be challenging enough to feel rewarding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna die a time or two.
Sure.
You're gonna get experience debts. And it's gonna get harder if you perform well.
Right.
So do you think that system would even be engaged, realistically thinking? And if it does, how do they engage it? Do they save it permanently per character? Like, hey, you performed this well on this boss, therefore you personally have it unlocked for you forever. Is it only for that one specific group? Is it 80% of that group only? And if it's you permanently, what if you never find a group that good again? Now you are in a group that's always going to have it unlocked at that difficulty,
Right.
and they're never going to pass it.
I would think that it wouldn't work that way. I would think it would be based on the group. But this goes back to what my original answer. He talked about this one time for 2 minutes, 3 years ago. So it's like,
Did he though? I feel he's mentioned it again since then.
I don't remember it being mentioned ever again. And it's like the AI that he talked about for boss tech, where the AI was going to respond to the different ways that you come at the boss. Like if you bring a whole, like way more players than it's designed for, then the boss will spawn ads that it otherwise wouldn't spawn to like even out the numbers. That's another thing that he mentioned like one time, and kind of we haven't heard a single thing about it since then. So there's a bunch of things about this game that are kind of like tucked in the back, and we don't really know much, which to me is a good thing in a lot of ways, because I don't want us to know everything at launch. But you know,
Yeah, fair.
yeah. So yeah, who knows how
I'm gonna have to search the wiki, because I know the conversations have been happening the entire time since then. So maybe that's just what was the Mandela effect? Maybe it's just a Mandela effect of thinking it's been mentioned since then.
now, and Penumbra says he's mentioned it at least a couple times, and maybe he has. But I only remember the one, and even in the when he has mentioned it, he hasn't gone into any details. So as far as like how that might work, who knows? But I will say this.
Yeah.
Ready
I will
to
say
serve,
this.
my lord.
Akadirus Rock. Thank you for the follow, man. Appreciate it. I will say this. Intrepid very clearly thinks out their systems. I don't know if you've ever noticed this. I've noticed this. When Steven gets asked a question, he always has an answer, and he has always thought it out. He's already thought about whatever question you have for him. Now, he may not have an answer you like, but he's always thought about it, and they actually are thinking out these systems and have shown more than enough willingness to change the systems and make adjustments to them as they go along. And that's why when people talk about the corruption system and some of these other ones about it's too punishing or it's not punishing enough, I'm like, they're dialing those knobs. The plan has got to be to dial those knobs, right, when we get into Alpha 2, to get to that sweet spot of the corruption's not too punishing, but it's not too easy, or, you know, whatever. So, Planet Dwarf said, just want to say this conversation is so good. Not my department, but I feel like I'm learning a lot from this discussion. It is a hot topic. It is a hot topic.
Glad you're enjoying. Glad you're enjoying.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This is definitely a hot topic lately for sure.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I was like, I know Virtek's got thoughts. He's got thoughts, so let's bring him on. So what is your experience with PvE rating, like hardcore content? I mean, I guess I never have asked you, like, what's the most difficult stuff you did? Like, you know, where do you stand on all of that?
I mean, I've gone through mythic dungeons. I've gone through some very difficult raids in many games. I've always been a tank for as long as I can remember. In all of those, I've completed those through as a healer. Also, I've completed some of those through as DPS. Like I've always been the master of none type. Like I always have many ults because I never know what the guild's gonna need. But also because if I'm going to be a tank, I need to know what my healers can do. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to be a healer, I need to know what the DPS can do to keep themselves safe.
Right.
And how easily they can move out of something. So I like with a priest, if I'm going to life grip somebody out of a pool of bubbling death, I need to know who can move and who can't.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't have a movement skill, I need to know who I can grab and pull.
You need to know which DPS is going to stand in it, because he needs to finish this GCD and can't have a DPS loss.
Yeah, because it's like a massive thing, right? Like maybe it's one that only comes around and it's a single random proc every like once a minute or something, and like so stuff like that. But I've completed all that in multiple different roles. I have been in guilds that have been like 1 or 2 weekly resets away from getting a server first.
Okay.
And I mean that by literally there was a server first and like 2 raid lockouts later we got it.
Yeah.
So it's been on the bleeding edge. I've also been on the not at all bleeding edge because I ran a guild of local friends. We met up. There's a site called meetup.com where you can just look up groups of people that are engaged in things that you're interested in, like board games, tabletop stuff. There's World of Warcraft groups, and there's like WildStar groups when WildStar was out. Like there's art stuff and whatnot. And I bumped into a group that was doing World of Warcraft. That was their thing. They always met up, but nobody wanted to join together into a guild with some alts and play together.
Right.
And we did that, and they voted me to run the guild. Wasn't a huge fan of that because I don't like leading a guild. It's too much for me. I don't like it.
Yeah.
But either way, like part of my responsibilities was doing a little bit of raid leading, and nobody, except for maybe 3 people in that entire guild, were actually like competitive edge raiders. Like, and we were trying to do 10 and 25 man content, so the rest of it was like, okay, let's go, guys. Okay, so what I need you to do is I need you to use your cooldowns. What are cooldowns, you say? It's going to take me longer than I thought.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Yes.
It's going to take me a lot longer than I thought.
Yeah.
Use defensives. What are All right.
You know, it's
Does
funny.
everybody have potions?
I had a healer in Star Wars: The Old Republic, and she was a top level healer. She was really good. She did a lot of nightmare mechanics, and I mean, she was good. Did not use her classes like the thing that made her class be badass and healing and separated it from the other groups. Never used it. Never clicked the button. Had no idea how it worked. And I was just like, "What? Huh?" So it's funny. Some people can do that stuff sometimes. So let's flip the conversation here a little bit. I think we've talked about the PvE, PvP stuff a little bit here as far as the content itself. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I want to see if we can arrive at a conclusion.
Okay,
The
like
first
speed
question
round
is-
style?
Yeah, you just give me a brief description on each one of these things.
Okay.
What is the role of a healer in PvE content?
Role of a healer in PvE content? Keep everyone alive.
What is the role of a healer in PvP content?
Keep everyone alive.
Okay. What is the role of a DPS in PvE content?
Kill things.
What is the role of a DPS in PvP content?
Kill things.
What is the role of a tank in PvE content?
Protect everyone else from taking, or actually intercept damage so others don't have to.
Okay. And what is the role of a tank in PvP content?
In most games, stand there and look like you're trying to do something.
I was going to say like harasser, stunner, interrupter guy. Like be a nuisance.
Well, see, yeah, that's the ideal, right? To be able to do stuff. But if in most games, like you don't have enough interrupts and CCs and whatnot to really be a nuisance, and you have nothing you can do to attract attention besides standing there and going, ah!
Yeah.
And you slap people with a sword that does like nothing.
Yeah.
Because you're a tank, right? And
I've been
aggro doesn't
describing
do
it
anything,
as-
taunts do nothing.
I've been describing it as a pool noodle. You know how with a pool noodle, like I
Yeah.
can hit you with a pool noodle and like it stings a little bit,
gonna
but I can
sting,
sit there for
yeah.
the next 3 hours and hit you with a pool noodle and you'd go home just fine, right? That's tanks. And that's really what it looked like tanks were doing in the Node War showcase. Sure seemed like they weren't doing much damage. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that tank is the one role in MMOs where your role, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish is different in PvP and PvE. It's 2 totally different things. Like in PvE, you're keeping aggro on the boss, you have to perform mechanics correctly, and you want to try to do anything you can to like lessen the amount of damage going out raid wide, using different cooldowns and stuff. In PvP, it's like blitz to the back line and use as many CCs and interrupts as you can on their healers while hitting them with a wet noodle. You know, like that.
Well,
it's
also-
not the same thing.
But you know what? It could be. It absolutely could be.
I agree. That's what I'm getting to.
A tank in PvP. Yeah, a tank in PvP, you absolutely could design it to where their job is to do the same thing they do in PvE. And honestly, even Basin kind of mentions it a little bit, because it's obviously those were simplified definitions of what their job is. But in PvE, your job is to assess the biggest threat in the room, make sure that you grab it, make sure to try to manage whatever ads come in as well, or get an off tank to do it if need be. Make sure you move whatever damage you can away from your group while directing damage to whatever the biggest threat is or the easiest to eliminate threat is. Like, there's a lot of stuff a tank can do now in PvP. You could do the same thing if they just made taunts and threat a thing. Like, if you could build threat on a player in a way where it just reduces their damage output until you die, that would be amazing. You literally, your damage output, you build threat on players, and it doesn't affect their gameplay, except that they can't do as much damage to anybody until you fall over dead.
Right.
So now everybody's trying to kill you because you're blasting out some AoE moves and adding threat to them, which is reducing 1, 2, 3, 5, 10% of their damage. And now they're hitting other DPS like a wet noodle.
Right.
But your mages are firing full power.
Right.
So it could absolutely be the same exact job.
Right. It could be. And I will say SWTOR has gotten the closest I've seen to this. I think ESO, somebody told me ESO has a very, very similar setup, but I never tanked in PvP in ESO. But in SWTOR, number one, you have a guard. It's ability that you can put on any individual player, and half the damage that goes to them goes to you instead. And so you are literally swapping your guard around to different people in the raid frame. Like, whoever's health is going down fastest, you swap your guard. And then taunts cause that player to do 50% less damage to anyone but you. So you're taunting, AoE taunting, guard swapping, and then also CCing and interrupting, and that's the job of a tank. And you felt like a tank, like you were in there to protect your teammates in a much better way. So I'm hoping that that's how Ashe is going to work, and I think it is. I think I've seen some stuff where they've kind of hinted that's the direction they're going. And I'm going to get to a question that somebody wanted to ask you specifically in just a second. But I know that sometimes when this conversation comes up, people bring up the idea of forcing a player to only attack you whenever you taunt them. I personally am 100% against anything that forces a player to do a specific thing. I want player choice. I want player agency. I want the player to always have a choice. But the other day, somebody mentioned something that I had never thought of before. And I don't know if technologically this would have even been possible a while back, but I think it might be. What if when you taunt a player, all of your allies disappear? They literally don't exist on the screen for that player. Only person they can see is you.
That could be pretty neat. Or if nothing else, at least applies like a red filter on the screen so that the only thing that they can see clearly is you, and literally everything else turns red.
Yeah,
and blurry.
Like the taunt pissed you off so bad that you're seeing red, kind of thing. Like,
that's absolutely enraging. Like you're the only thing that shows clearly. Everything else on the screen just turns red. I'm not
saying it's a good idea.
I kind of like that.
I'm not saying
like
it's a good
5
idea.
seconds?
I wanted to throw it out there. Like, what would that be like? How would that work? And I'm seeing a lot of people saying sounds awful, no way, whatever. But I'm kind of like, but why? Why is it awful? What's the reasoning why that's awful? And maybe there's a good reason. I don't know what it is.
I'm just saying something like that. I would love something like that if it were on like a 1.5 minute cooldown and it only lasted 5 seconds. I would be perfectly okay with that.
Yeah.
If it turned like the red filter and everything, if everybody else vanished, that might be a little excessive. I do like the idea of it, but turning it into a reality might be a little bit excessive. Is kind of where I'm looking at there. At least if it's like a filter that blurs everything but you.
Yeah. That's
at least something where they could try to push through the rage, so to say, and it might feel better. But that's an intriguing idea. I like it.
Right.
Just in general, that's neat.
And so there are some good answers that are coming in. Overcomplicates how the current taunt works and stuff like that. And in general, I do agree. All I'm trying to do is arrive at a place where when a new player to Ashes of Creation, especially like a new MMO player, comes in the game and he's running around and he's doing things with his friends and they're going into dungeons and he's tanking bosses and stuff like that. And the first time any type of group PvP happens, what he does between the two, PvE and PvP, is at least somewhat similar, right? Because in so many of these games, it's just so widely different that like it's a different person that you need to be PvP tanking versus PvE tanking. And then, of course, in a lot of games, as was mentioned, PvP tanking is completely useless and you might as well not even be there. I've heard WoW's like that, or was, I don't know, because I don't do a lot of WoW.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just trying to arrive at that place. Like, how do we make it where what you do in one is the same as what you do in the other? So, the crossover is pretty much the same. So somebody asked, I was trying to scroll up and find it, so I apologize to whoever it was who asked the question. I'm not going to be able to say your name, but somebody asked, basically wanted to know from you, what's your impressions or your feelings of the tank from the PEI test, the ones that you're allowed to talk about, obviously. What are your impressions of tanking specifically in PvP? So
Steven always does his disclaimer, so I'm going to toss out the same thing here, right? Like everything's currently like not even alpha 2, it's totally at alpha phases. Testing is going to happen, all this and that, et cetera, but where it's sitting at in the Node Wars testing, the tank felt amazing.
Okay.
In every aspect, it was fantastic. There were skills and components to it where you could survive a lot of stuff. You could take a beating. You could taunt people, which would, reduce their damage output to other people but you. And you could protect people with a direct protect skill. You could spec into making it the tether for it longer or farther away from you. You could, but that took a skill point, right? So you lost an entire other skill to get like another 50% added to the difference. It was like 10 meters versus like 15 or 20, something like that. And it would redirect that damage to you. You could use, you'd see a small little blue dome over the tank walking around. It would move with them. That was the new version of Aegis. So it would take whatever damage happened to anybody there, and it would split it back to you.
So just to clarify, just to clarify, for some people may not have realized this, when you were watching the Node Stream War, every once in a while you would see, especially Keen, because he's a freaking monster, jump up on something and start doing that really rapid fire shot that the Rangers get, and you would see the word redirected all over the screen. And that's what you're talking about. That was the Aegis ability, like blocking and shutting out some of the damage that was going on for the people behind you that otherwise would have been like full damage, right? Is that what you're saying?
Redirecting it directly over to the tank. Yeah. And there was another one which was a giant dome-looking shape that didn't move. Once it landed, it stayed in place, and that was a tank skill where you basically grab it. It looked like the way it was currently designed in visual effects, it was almost like grabbing a battle standard and chucking it to wherever you targeted on the field. It would throw it in the air, it would land, and then just poof, and it would give everybody in that area a shield of 8% of your health.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah. So the more health you had, the more of a shield it would give everybody else that was in that area.
It was a templated ability, so it gave you a circle that you had to place on the ground somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And there were 3 ways to cast it as well, and these were all, you could change these in the settings, and these were for literally every skill that worked like this with a template. You could either have it do a double cast where you had to hit the button, you would then aim it, and then hit the button again to cast it. There was a quick cast, which I didn't mess with that one, and then there was a like confirm or something, where you would hold the button down, aim, and then let go, and it would shoot it out.
Okay.
So it was like a click the button, aim, click your mouse, or like you hold the button, aim it, and when you let go, it would fire it off. Or you had to hit the button, aim it, and then hit the button again, and it would fire it like that.
So it had different ways that you could
interact with like the template.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The way like the templated skills like that, where you had to aim it somewhere and then fire it off. There were multiple different ways to use them.
Awesome.
So that was with everybody. That was in the core game settings. But yeah, the tank felt great because those are 3-4 different ways of protecting other people that are unique to many other games that you don't really have that kind of a skill, right? But then there were also like intercept skills. There was I forget what they called it, but it was basically like a giant red circle that would appear around you. Nobody used it in the video that I saw, the Node Wars video, at least that I saw. No tank used it because it just didn't seem like it was set up to work correctly to be effective in PvP.
Sure.
But it was a red pulsing zone, and I think it lasted for 10 seconds, and every second it would give you like a 10% chance of tripping somebody. But it would also pulse out threat and damage. So it would tick out damage, threat, and a chance to trip.
And CC, okay.
So in PvP, all there really was that little bit of trickle damage, like really little trickle damage, and a 10% chance to trip.
And so that didn't really...
So it didn't seem like it was worthwhile in PvP.
Did it follow
not
you
yet.
around? Or did you just drop it in one spot?
Nope, it followed you around. It was just a constant rage type mechanic, and it was just pulsing. But it was on a fairly short cooldown, so you could have it up a lot. But it just didn't seem like it was really useful in PvP.
Okay.
But again, we didn't have a lot of time to really test it all out because we were there to test the Node Wars system, not really the classes per se.
But imagine
So-
when you get your Bard secondary and become an Argent and you use that ability, and instead of that, it's him playing a little jam and everybody's stunned around you inside that red circle. So, I mean, it could get better with an augment.
Yeah, like there were even other skills. Like if you're playing like a dive type role, then you could definitely dive into the middle of a group with. There was something called charge, where you would run at like triple speed, and it was running for like 10 seconds straight. Like you could cover a lot of ground, like a lot of ground with this if you wanted to literally run across a battlefield. It was crazy. There was also another one where it was just a little bit of a shield bash thing. You could dive real quick, but once you get back there into the middle of a group, if somebody started running because you beelined for their main healer, there was a tomahawk throw you could do. You could toss something like 30 yards or something like that, 30 feet. And if you spec'd for it, it would actually slow them down. So they couldn't run away from you after you got to them. Again, as a tank, you're not going to do a whole lot, but if you charged through a group and brought somebody with you when you charged, then they might be able to help you out with it.
Okay.
If there was somebody trying to escape, you could run after them and do the same thing, hit them with a tomahawk chop, and they'd slow down. But there were so many abilities that the tank could do that really felt like it was supporting the group or making yourself more durable, or you could use them all together.
Right.
Like something that gave you, there was one skill that I think it returned 50% of the health that you lost in the last four seconds. So if you see somebody ready to cast a fireball down and you toss up an Aegis that redirects 50% of everyone's damage to you, and then after that fireball hits, you use the recover your health thing.
Yeah.
It's you just gain back most of the damage. That spell was basically useless. It killed nobody. Most of the damage was redirected to the tank, who has a massive health pool, and they just recovered half of the damage anyway. So,
Okay, I want to talk to you about a
Congratulations.
specific tank combo that I didn't see, but I was thinking about. But I want to answer Big Quads on Campus says, I wonder what it means to invest points into abilities in Ashes of Creation, or if you can just spend a couple points on everything and it's only the augments that make a difference in your choices. I will tell you that in Alpha 1, you absolutely could only put enough points in a few abilities to make them useful. And if you had any ability that was part of your class that you didn't put any points into, it was just slightly above completely useless. Like, it wasn't completely useless, but it was just a little above completely useless. So, like, I always talk about, people complain about there only being one healer class because the cleric is the only healer. But I'm like, you're not going to be able to spec into all those heals. You're going to be able to build your healer in numerous different ways, depending on where you put your points. And Phantom X has talked a lot about that as well. So definitely there is a choice that you are making there, and it's a conscious, meaningful, and impactful choice. So one thing that I immediately started thinking of when I was watching what the tanks were doing in the Node War, because it was the first time we'd seen that tank wall, the wall you throw up, were y'all at all trying to coordinate, grapple, pull somebody, and then wall so they can't get back, and everybody... Because I never actually saw it happen, but I was just like, that's gonna be like, I don't know how we're gonna do it yet, but with my group, we're absolutely gonna have some like keyword or something that we say, and it's gonna mean, hey, I'm grappling, you get ready with your wall, let's go, you know. That seemed like that'd be such a fun combination with the tanks.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there were times when we were at the God Spike channeling that, and
Okay.
there was maybe a call that was made of, hey, they're running back in, hey, so and so is ahead of the group. As soon as they pass, a certain part, drop a wall. And that one person would cross by a certain point where we kept dropping our wall, and we'd put a wall there, and the rest of the group would get stuck behind it. That one person would just get eaten up.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
The
that
zone
one person
denial
snuck past
of
real
that
quick.
wall is just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
You should see the zone denial of the other versions of the wall too, because there's 3 versions they were talking about,
Yep.
and Chibi and I couldn't make the one testing where they had all 3 in the game for testing at that point.
Okay.
There was apparently a way to spec for one of 3 different types, and the other 2 types I saw in previous tests prior to that day. It was like the week before or something like that. But there was one that was about the same width as that red wall you saw in the video, but it was really tall.
Okay.
It was probably like almost a 2-floor building tall.
Oh.
And then there was another one that was not even quite to the roof of a single floor building like in game. It was actually relatively low, but it was about 5 of those walls long.
Oh, okay. Way wider.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you could have a really tall wall that was relatively skinny, say like about the width of that red wall you saw, and then there was a really long one that was probably like maybe 4 of those long. I didn't really count it, but yeah, it was about 4 of those long.
That's crazy.
And then the red one was planned to be a. Have you ever played Overwatch?
No, I mean I've seen it being played, but no.
Yeah, it's basically it was supposed to interact in a way where to your enemies it's going to be a wall like any other wall. To you, you'll be able to heal and shoot through it.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's
Yeah.
nasty. That's nasty.
Yeah, right. So
So
you
what
can
they
have
need
your
next
tank on
is
the other side of that wall or something, and you could still heal your tank. And yet nobody's getting past the tank. If they do, they're not getting past the wall, and your heals are still keeping them up.
That's awesome. Now what they need is a tank ability to throw people over the wall.
Yeah, right.
Just chunk people over the wall. So
Get out in front of it and start
Yeah.
shoveling people over one at a time.
yeah. That'd be really funny, man. Okay, that's really cool. I'm glad that the tank seems to be in a good place. From the conversations that I've had with other people, and especially from watching the content from the other PI people, it seems like most of the classes are in a pretty good place. I've heard a lot of people suggesting that the classes that we've seen, like the further back you have to go in time to see the class reveal, the better the class is right now, because it's had more time in the oven to cook. And so some of the most new ones are a little like not quite there yet, and in terms of all of the choices that you would want and all the abilities that you want. But it does seem like they're going in a really good way as we head into Alpha 2, which is a perfect segue into my next topic. We have to talk about this with every one of the content creators that comes out. When's Alpha 2, bud? What's your prediction?
So I have a couple. See, it's really hard because I have a couple predictions just based on the timing of quarter 3. Right. So it's been a long time since we've seen Intrepid out and about. Right. Well, if they're trying to aim for quarter 3, it just so happens to be that there's a couple big conventions that go around in quarter 3. One of them they've gone to before, which is PAX West.
Okay. Sure.
And what better time would it be for them to make a surprise appearance there than during the time they're going to try to do the alpha? But they can't obviously like launch the alpha and then go hang out there at a convention. So I'm thinking, actually, this is more of a hope because this year's also the year that GB and I decided we're going to go.
Okay.
And we're checking out PAX West. So it's more of a hope that they're going to actually be there. And if they did, then they would need a couple weeks when they get back. So we're thinking like literally the last day of September.
Okay. I mean, I know that's a common.
Because, yeah, but that's my reasoning for why I think that, because then they would also have time to do the live stream, the dev stream at the end of that month, which is like the 27th, I think, and then the 30th, the last day of the month, is Monday.
Oh,
They would come
that
back
all
from the
does line
weekend
up really
and
well, doesn't it?
yeah. So it's one of those like I saw the stars aligning. Like maybe this could be a thing. Maybe they could actually be going to a convention or two, make announcements, like have some tables out, do some things, say, hey, we've got these keys. If you guys want to win some keys, maybe they'll like sit at a panel or something and talk about the game and say, hey, yes, we're doing our alpha. And then they would come back, relax after, relax, recover from the trip really, and start getting everything lined up for alpha. Make the final live stream be a whole lot of, all right, guys, so are you ready for it? Here's what to expect on Monday.
Mr.
And then
Newcock
Monday
says they
they
don't
open
have
up the
time
doors.
for a convention.
Yeah, they don't have time for a convention.
And there's probably a lot of truth
But-
in that as well.
It was either going to be that or the other direction is if they, during this next live stream, say that it's going live before August so that they have time to work out some kinks in the alpha before presenting it at a convention. Again, fingers crossed, because this is the year that Chibi and I decided we're going to go check it out.
Yeah, that's cool. So August or early August or late September is basically your thought.
Yeah,
Okay.
those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts.
I have a couple of thoughts. Now, what I've been saying is we're definitely getting Alpha 2 on September 78th. That's still technically quarter 3. Still September. That's been the joke. But I'll tell you what I would do if I were me. I would do if I was Intrepid, I would do one of two things. Either they're ready and they're, I think we know by their milestones that they're not going to be ready. But maybe at the end of August they're ready, or maybe even at the end of July, whatever. When they're ready, they wait till the next live stream, and you go blah 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 video, show the pictures, do the Q&A, and at the end they go, "Oh yeah, and Alpha 2 is live." And the reason you do
Just
that,
toss it in at the end.
the reason you do that, you avoid the crazy, like if they announce Alpha 2 2 weeks or 3 weeks, a month, whatever ahead of time, on that day, tens upon tens upon tens of thousands of people will have taken the day off from work, taken the week off from work, taken the month off from work. Like, everybody's gonna be there. You slam the servers, crash them, it could be a big freaking deal. But if you just go, Alpha 2's live, people are gonna be like scrambling, trying to get out of work, run home so they can get there. Some people can't get out of work, they don't even know that it's happening, and you don't like crash, you don't like slam the servers. You know what I mean? So that's my first
Yeah.
my first thought. My second thought is
Okay.
a little more let's say forceful. So I believe it is August 24th when World of Warcraft: The War Within is launching. It's a big expansion of World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I think so. I've heard things. Haven't
Launch
been
it
keeping
on-
track of it though.
Launch it on August 24th. Number one, you're walking in the room and throwing your dick down on the table. I'm not scared of you. You're like sending a message. I'm not scared of you. But at the same time, while you're sending that message, you're using the fact that more people are going to go play the World of Warcraft expansion because it's a complete game to accomplish the same thing as saying, hey, we're doing it live now. The launch won't be crazy. It'll still be big. But it won't be crazy. And then people will trickle in over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Because that's how long it takes to get bored of a World of Warcraft expansion, in just a couple of weeks. So people will come start trickling in, and you don't like just crazy slam your servers. And then because you're going to slam your servers as soon as they put in secondary archetypes or augments or nodes level 4 or naval content or whatever. Like, you're going to get lots of chances to slam your servers, but you get to like launch without insanity. So there you go.
Yeah.
I think the first day of August 24th or September 78th. That's my choices.
September 78th. I still love that one.
Yeah. So, we'll see.
That's why, I have those two predictions. Granted, what's funny is I was going through old videos that we put up a long time ago, and I know we were having a conversation with somebody, and the prediction at that time was popular to have Alpha coming in 2023.
Yeah.
That was the number being thrown around at the time. I think it was from like 2021 or 2022 maybe. We're like,
Yeah.
yeah, 2023. I think that's gonna be the date. It's gonna be the time. July 2023, and it made sense to everybody who was talking at the moment. And no
Yeah. We'll see.
predictions, man.
Who knows? It's fun. I like to do the prediction questions. I like to get the thoughts of all the different people that I bring on the show. I just think it's a lot of fun to talk about that stuff.
It is.
So now next, just rampant baseless speculation about something that we can't possibly know. How long is Alpha 2 going to be?
Oof. I've always said it. My view anyway is going to be a year and a half, 2 years.
Okay.
I've never changed from day one. If it's shorter than a year and a half, I'll be surprised. Mainly because this isn't your typical MMO that has like a solid base game and then some other random plug-in things. No, there are so many complicated systems that need to work together.
Yes.
That I could see this easily lasting a year and a half to test everything and have a successful test. Like, because along the way, there's going to be this introduced that depends on all that other stuff. And then you introduce that new thing and you're trying to test that new thing. And lo and behold, some of the code ends up breaking something else back here. All right, well, now let's fix that. Pull that out, turn it off so it's not breaking the server currently. We'll reiterate and we'll put it back in.
Right.
So, I mean, that's why I think I would be surprised if it's less than a year and a half, and pleasantly surprised, obviously,
Right.
but I don't expect it to be less than like a year and a half, really.
Okay. Nothing less than a year and a half. And then you said not more than 2 years. So a year and a half to 2 years is your prediction for the length of Alpha 2. Okay, so let me ask you a different question. Margaret has said numerous times that they show us 10% of what they have. What does that mean?
That's also a really good question, because they could literally mean just visual content as well. Like, the entire world could be built for all we know. Like, the Underrealm and everything, and all they're doing is polishing visually the entire world. That's what that could mean. It could also mean that they have at least the skeletal structure for every system created, in place, crafted, and they're playing like when you go to start putting together like a Lego set for like the really complicated ones that have moving parts, and you're like, let me just push this. Okay, it kind of moves that. Cool, this should work. Then you start building other stuff around it. They could have the entire everything built up to that. Well, okay, this kind of works. It's not stable yet, but it's doing the thing it's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
I wiggle this and that thing over there moves, so we're good so far. Don't push too hard on it, guys.
Right.
We'll come back to it. It could totally have everything in that state, and that could be the complete game, just not all built out, right? Like, I honestly don't even know. I haven't even tried to hazard a guess on what exactly that means.
So I'm a loser who mostly just sits around thinking about Ashes of Creation. Yeah, I might be working, I might be watching TV with my wife, I might be playing a different video game, but I'm thinking about Ashes of Creation at all times. It's kind of pathetic, but that's a whole other, we don't need to get into that right now, okay? So I think it could mean a couple of different things, and I think that could be, depending on what it means, you could be looking at a really long Alpha 2, or 8 months, 10 months of Alpha 2, and we're out of there. And I think my conspiracy theory that they were planning to launch Alpha 2 in March of 2023, and for whatever reason they didn't, and that we went. That's my tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. There's a whole bunch of parallels that lead me to that, but irrelevant. If what they mean is kind of what you said, we've already, the world map is like mostly finished. We have the biomes there. Yeah, they need some polishing and whatever, but like we've built all the biomes. The map works. You can go to stage 6 with a Metropolis node, and like all of the systems have been thought out, put into the game. We more or less think that they work together and all that stuff. We need to get in game and slowly introduce the systems and test them. So the stuff that takes a long time to make, like systems and art and stuff like that is done. We're working on this other stuff now that's a lot easier, that goes together quicker, like putting together a class or some of these other things that they're doing. You could be looking at a situation where they're like, this month we're testing secondary archetypes, and then once that's good, okay, good, and then the next 2 weeks, okay, this we have a batch of 50 augments. We're testing those 50 augments. Okay, they work great, and like they have a testing schedule set up like that where we end up with a short or short-ish Alpha 2. But if what they mean by that is something different, something like the art part of it is not done, but a lot of the systems are done or whatever, but the part that's going to take a long time, building the worlds, takes a long time, content takes a long, like if they say 90% done, and a big part of that 90% is the content, the quests, the story arcs, the bosses, the dungeons, all that stuff, they're really far towards completing the game. Really far. But when they're saying 90%, they're not talking about that stuff. The content is what still has to be made. Then we could be so far away from this. So I don't know, just depends on how you look at what that 90% is, or the 10%, however you want to look at that. Anyways, I just think it's fun, interesting to think about. And see, Instrad said that's not what 90% means, and it's like, right? It's like what?
Well, but yeah, that's kind of the other angle of why I said I haven't even tried to hazard a guess, because do they mean that they've shown us 90% of what they have, as far as going back to the Legos example, how many Legos they have in the bucket?
Yeah.
Or have they only showed us 10% of the project that they've put together with said Legos that they have in the bucket?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. You just put it so much better and more succinctly than I did. Yes. Or do they? Yes, that's exactly right.
Like, have they gathered everything they need in bits and pieces, or have they put it together and they've only shown us like a put together 10% of what they actually have already created?
Right.
And that's why I haven't bothered trying to hazard a guess, because that could also just be an exaggeration. They could actually be showing us 40% of what they have created.
You think that Margaret 30%. Would exaggerate? How dare I'm messaging her right now and telling her.
I think Margaret is an international woman of mystery, and she would absolutely try to lead us down incorrect paths of hazarding guesses.
That's really funny. Vale Mistworded says, nah, she said it multiple times. And yeah, I mean, she said it several times. And that's why I've been really thinking about that a lot lately. Like, what does she mean by 90% or 10%? 10% of what exactly? And like I said, if they already have all the quest lines figured out and all the dungeons and like the actual content of the game, they're a long way towards completing this. If they have none of that and all they've done is the systems and the art, then, we're a long ways away. So Splinter says systems can take months and months to fully implement as well. Even when you've got sort of a tier 01 version of the system, you got to tie all the other game systems and assets to that system and all the interconnected systems. And to me, that's the thing that's always confused me just in general about the length of Alpha 2 or the development of this game, however you want to look at it, is every single system in the game is interwoven through like every other single system in the game, and especially the nodes. Everything is woven through the nodes, so it's like it's not the same thing as developing your systems for a typical MMO. It's more complicated than that, and developing a system for an MMO is complicated. So yeah, who knows how far away we are.
Yeah.
So we both know you're going to play a tank, right?
Yeah.
Have you started thinking about your secondary archetype and where you want to go with it? Which one is for you, or are we not even getting there yet?
It's going to depend on a lot of stuff, namely how difficult it's going to be to change out secondaries.
Okay.
Because if I can change out secondaries and so here's kind of what I mean. Because Steven hasn't really, as far as I know, put out anything concrete on how it's going to work. Last I recall any statement on it, it's, hey, we're still kind of discussing that, but what we're kind of thinking is maybe something like this, or something along those lines. But if let's say when you hit level, 30, where you unlock the secondary archetype, is what they were talking about, 25 or 30? 20, yeah. Okay, so you hit 25, you can unlock your secondary archetype, but I'm sure it's going to require a quest line. let's say it requires a literal 10-hour quest line.
Sure.
You're gonna put 10 hours into this one quest because it's a major thing, right? And you unlock this secondary archetype, and then you start playing with that secondary archetype all the way up to level 50. Now that you hit level 50, or let's even say level 30, every 5 levels you can unlock another secondary archetype, but you still have to do that 10-hour long quest for each and every archetype that you can unlock the capability to use. But then once you unlock the capability to use it, if you can go back to town and hot switch it out, like redoing a spec, then I absolutely do not care. I'm going to try them all out and we'll see. But I know I'm most excited to see what Tank Mage is all about.
Okay.
Most excited to see what Tank Bard is all about.
Okay.
And obviously Tank Cleric, so I can help keep myself alive a little bit more. That feels very much like a good PvP option, to be able to have some survivability and be able to dive when I need to dive and get myself out of that situation without needing a healer at my hip. But it's also going to depend very heavily on what Steven had mentioned a long time ago about how Tank is going to be noticeably more powerful than Tank anything else.
Oh, did he say
noticeably more? Yeah.
Okay.
Like when it came to people saying like, well, it stems from people asking about raids and saying, hey, can a tank mage tank just as well as a tank can? And the answer has always been no. Okay. Tank is your main tank. You can off tank as a tank mage, but you're never going to touch the strength of a tank because they are a master of what they are. They're a tank.
Okay.
And to me, that means that I'm probably going to only play tank. If that's the case, I'm not going to play with flavor. I'm not going to have fun exploring all this stuff because I want to be the most performant that I can. I want to be the best.
Okay.
So I'm going to have fun when it comes to the betas and in my off time, but when it comes to actually doing stuff, it's just going to be pure tank, and that's it.
Tank. That's interesting. Yeah. I'm a tank bard is my first go-to. I tell people all the time, I kind of view it as like a captain class where like you're the tank, but you're also like the leader in the area, and you're like putting out these auras that inspire your teammates and make them hit harder or whatever. Now it may not play like that at all, and I may be dead wrong, but that's my first one. That's where I'm going to go first is tank bard, which is Argent, by the way, and try that out. You probably do that. That's a Magic Pipe Magnificent says, enjoyed the show. Have a great night, everyone. Off to watch House of the Dragon. Just FYI, my wife is waiting on me to finish this up, and then I'm going to go watch House of the Dragon with her. So I'll be there with you shortly.
Oh, hey, you have a good night there, Magic.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out with us, man. Appreciate it. There's a shortage of tanks in MMOs. There is a shortage of tanks. I think it's because it's the most responsibility. And so people don't want the responsibility. So
that's absolutely, that's one of the big parts of it, which honestly I find it fun. I need to know what I'm doing. I need to know what at least some other people are doing and be able to work through it.
Yeah.
And I actually enjoy that. Like,
so do you want it to be where you unlock all of the different secondary archetypes and then just be able to hot swap them in town? Is that what you want?
Yeah. I want to be able to run through the quest, run through the same unlocking phase that you had to do to get it at 25 for every single secondary. You have to go through and you have to do something related to that archetype. Like if you're going to unlock a mage secondary archetype, you're going to have to go do a mage related quest. And it should take you the same amount of time as unlocking your first archetype. Even if it's to the degree of you do one quest to unlock the capability of having a secondary archetype, and then another one to unlock each individual archetype. I would be perfectly okay with that, because that to me feels like I am learning something about that way of fighting, that way of defending, that way of healing, that way of summoning, for that matter. But I have to learn about that archetype.
I don't like that. That's interesting. I want your class to be a choice with impact to it, with meaning to it, and I don't want people meta chasing. And
okay,
so if you could just go to town and just swap back and forth easily all the time, it also creates more complicated gameplay. Like you're already going to have weapons and armor that are going to be better in certain situations, like in a heat area, you may want rings that defend against heat or whatever. So it's like it's creating more like specialized stuff all the time. If I'm doing PvP, I need to be a tank mage, and if I'm doing PvE, I need to be a tank, and if I'm going to go to this one area of the world, I need to be a tank summoner or whatever. So that's interesting.
Okay, so let me rephrase it in a different way. Would you rather it be where you can go do PvE content with your tank mage, but you can't go do PvE content with your tank mage because tank mage sucks for PvP to the point where you're absolutely useless? And you spent, keep in mind, and you spent months leveling this character. You are now locked out of doing PvP content to any meaningful degree.
No, I want you to be able to change your secondary archetype, but I don't want you to be able to hot swap it under any circumstance. I think like a 2-hour quest to change your archetype is fine, but you have to keep in mind the what Steven has said, and there's a direct quote, and I can't pull it up right in front of me, but he has specifically said that how did he word it? That they want you to be able to be meta in one aspect of the game, but not all aspects of the game. So you should be able to dominate or be good or whatever in some specific aspect, or you're really great at this one thing or whatever, but not all of them at the same time. And if you allow hot swapping in nodes between secondary archetypes, you would be able to, like you just said, okay, well, I'm done PvEing, so now I want to go PvP. Let me just go swap it out real fast. And that's what I want to try to avoid. It's interesting. I'd never even heard somebody suggest doing like a 10-hour quest for each one of them and then just hot swapping. I didn't like, to me, that was never even on the table. I'm really interested to see if Steven actually is thinking that way.
Oh, see, that's I think there's enough risk versus reward in the entire game. There's enough like your choices matter. There's enough your choices this and your choices that. Like some things just need to be, this is a game we're playing.
Yeah.
This is a game we're playing. This is not life. Your real life does not hang on this game.
Disagree.
Being like every choice is vital and lasts with you forever.
Yeah.
Like this is a game. It should absolutely be fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can leave town and you can go and you can be locked into your build, and you can't change it on the fly while out and about. I'm okay with that. Do I think it would be more fun if I could change my specs and like fiddle with it and actually experiment while I'm in the field? Yeah, that'd be great. I don't want to have to experiment and take a 30-minute hike back to town to change my stuff for a single like one skill change, right, and then hike 30 more minutes out just to say, hey, how did this affect my build? Jesus. Like, I don't want to have to do that and see if like I can survive this NPC's onslaught now that I've changed 2 skills. Sounds ridiculous to me. I just want to change it outside of combat. But I can concede I need to go back to town and talk to a trainer, and he needs to teach me how to change my skills back to how I had them yesterday. Okay, fine. But when it comes to changing a secondary, like I spent the time, I put in the time, the effort to learn that style of fighting, to learn that style of defense, to learn that style of whatever. I should be able to go back to town, talk to the trainer, and say, hey, remember when I used to know monk stuff? I'd like to know monk stuff again today. That'd be pretty cool. I think that should be at least that.
Drew says MMOs aren't meant to be fun. What the fuck is this take?
What the fuck is this take?
What do you even think of this? It's supposed to be fun nonsense. What are you even talking about, bro? That's really funny. No, that's interesting. I don't agree, but I definitely see the argument and see what you're saying in a lot of ways. But I definitely want your class choice to be more meaningful than that. But we'll see what they're doing. My interpretation of what Steven has said in the past is he said there would be a quest line and it would take 2 to 4 hours to change in order to change your secondary archetype. That's exactly what he said. I don't know, probably 18, 20 months ago, something like that.
Well, I mean, I'll dig into it now because I'm curious if he's gone concrete with it. But that's last I heard, or last I remember hearing. Let me put it that way. It was we haven't come to a conclusion yet. What we're thinking is something like,
sure.
Or it was kind of like this is about what we're thinking. We're not decided yet.
Right.
But Mr. Noob, I'm not wanting to hot swap like gear, specs, weps at the drop of a hat. I mean, it'd be cool if you could, but I mean, still your primary archetype should stay the same. You wanted to be a tank, you can be a tank. That's it.
Yeah.
But also not necessarily at the drop of a hat, but also like I'm not sure why you called out being able to swap gear and weapons at the drop of a hat. You absolutely should be able to swap your gear and weapons at the drop of a hat. I mean, I can get out of combat and change my shirt and my hat and my boots, and I can reach in my bag and grab the other sword.
Right.
Like you're not glued into armor. Even archaic knights, they took an hour to change, but they could still change like
Right.
out in the field. They didn't need to go back to town for that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think your choice should matter when it comes to the primary. Like, yeah, you can't change your primary. That's kind of silly.
Yeah.
But to choose at level 25 what you are going to be for the next 25 levels and have it be an arduous, even a 2 to 4 hour thing to try out the other ones, like, and then you can't bounce back to one that you actually did enjoy more than the rest, just sounds kind of like an arduous journey you really don't need to put somebody through.
Right.
Give them a longer quest. But I mean, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll absolutely.
I might not get my way on it, but
Yeah, and
this
I
is
might
my
not
dream.
get mine. You know, and
I'm
I'm
stating
not
my
gonna
dreams
quit.
right now. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm
Yeah,
not quitting
Chibi
based
and
on
I-
that.
Oh yeah, there's so many things about Ashes. Me and Chibi have just come to grips with the fact that it's not built for us,
Right.
like at all. There's some aspects of the game that we absolutely do not like, but not to the point where we're gonna walk away. I mean,
Right.
it's as a whole, it's still the greatest vision of a game that we've bumped into.
Yeah. Nope. I
So
agree-
we're
I
not
agree with
we're
that.
not going anywhere.
Right.
There's just some things we don't like, and that's true with everything in life. I don't think there's one except peanut butter. Well, no, it's too fattening. Yeah, so there's one thing I don't like about one of my favorite foods. See, it's too fattening. If it just had less fat, it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just things you got to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna eat the peanut butter. You're not
Yeah,
stopping.
I'm
You're
gonna
not-
eat the
you're not
peanut butter.
stopping.
Yeah,
If I get fat, I get fat.
There's
Like
just-
these are the compliments. You know, this is what happens.
yeah. There's a downside to it. That's fine. Everything has downsides.
Epic Man says a creative mode to try things out would be nice, and I want to point out I don't think Epic Man's ever chatted him on my live stream, so appreciate that, man, jumping in the chat. I think they've mentioned something about an arena or something where you'd be able to go in and like try different things.
For one more time, what was that? My brain
Like,
just completely
yeah.
turned off for a second.
He said a creative mode to try things out, but haven't they said something about a place you'll be able to go on the node where you can like swap your stuff out and try different things and that sort of thing, like a test dummy or something like that? I feel like they've said something like that.
I mean, that'd be cool. I don't remember. The only thing I really recall being said definitely about there being a place for people to test builds and whatnot is arenas, PvP arenas. That's the
Okay.
only thing I remember being tied to it. And like, there might be a test dummy, but I don't remember that being associated with like just going to really unlock and test different abilities. Let's see here.
Yakan Gaming says, I want it to be hard to switch secondary archetypes so less people will tell me to go change to what they want. And that is another thing I was thinking about whenever you were saying that you wanted to be able to switch instantly. And I was even saying I don't want people chasing the meta, and I didn't even think about it from that perspective. But yes, you're going to have, if Tank Mage is clearly the best, everybody's going to tell you go change to Tank Mage or you can't be in this group.
Pallywags has it. Pallywags has the idea. You say
Oh, yeah.
no and you walk away because those people are always going to exist.
Yeah.
They're gonna tell you, well, guess what? We're raiding later tonight. If you want to raid with us, no, I'm not gonna raid with you. All right, we're out of the guild. Bye.
Yeah.
I didn't want to join you guys if you're gonna be like this. Well, now you know.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I want to raid with you guys. Well, you're not going to like that. If you want to raid with us, you got to go change.
Yeah.
I don't care if it takes you 2 hours, 4 hours. We'll see you tomorrow.
Pally said, don't
So
wanna
that's going to be
there
their
anyway.
view, no matter how long. If you can change it, they're going to tell you to change it.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Especially if it's like you said, if it's tonight. Threather says not enough dragons. What about liches and oak dews and demi liches and beholders? Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how many there are of all of those things. It's been an interesting conversation about PvP and PvX and
Yeah,
Ashes of
yeah.
Creation. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to add? Anything you want to tell my audience, which I always point out is actually our audience because we all share the same audience. Got
Hey,
anything
recycling
else?
is good.
Yeah.
Recycling is good for the environment, right?
Yes, exactly.
All right, yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing really to add is just to restate the fact that I am very outspoken about trying to get more PvE concerns addressed for the game, just because I've seen games that die because they don't have enough PvE people interested in it. Like even one of my favorites ever, WildStar. People stopped playing the game because it was too hard. It was marketed as being too hard. It was marketed as being difficult.
Yep.
Everybody loved it. It ended up being difficult, and they all walked away because even PvE people who were hardcore about PvE were not satisfied because they could not access and complete the content. Even to a minor degree, like they couldn't access the content, therefore they did not like it and they left. So
Right.
that's my only, like, my major concern with Ashes is that there's nothing there for the PvE people. PvE, combat, and elder game, because I always have to specify that, or else somebody says there's questing, and it makes something spring in my head. But yeah, there's for elder game PvE combat content, like competitive. This is us doing big boss things, challenging content. They need something there that feels satisfying.
From a PvE perspective.
Something satisfying. Yeah. I mean, I want to dig into all the above, so I'm not asking for PvE servers. I'm just trying to make sure that the problem is known, that there's nothing there that's going to satisfy, like truly satisfy PvE players.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm for the most part, I'm with you. I think there needs to be something something for the PvE players. This game does so far. I say the PvE feels tacked on, but somebody, Droog, said they've been cagey about it, and that might be more accurate. We just don't really know. They weren't really like told us this is what you can expect from PvE in this game, and so we're all going to wait till Alpha 2, and very much like what we were just saying about switching your secondary archetype. If they don't have any difficult type PvE, I'm still playing this game. I'm still making content for this game. Y'all are never getting rid of me. So you can try, but I'm right here, and I'm gonna be making content. So John Prescott says, I actually think the community will make their own RP PvE server, not official, but there will be one. Yeah. Yeah, they may. I mean, there'll definitely be an RP server. I don't know how much they'll be able to enforce PvE only.
Yeah,
I almost feel like the PvPers would go there just to fuck with the people who don't want to PvP.
Yeah, well, they would need some really hardcore PvP folks to be able to enforce a PvE server thing. So it'd be kind of like a paradox there.
Yes, it's very much a paradox. That's pretty funny. All right,
maybe it's just a server full of people that just sit down when open world PvP comes around. Everybody just sits, and that's all they do. Nobody fights back.
Nobody fights back. Yeah, I get. Yeah, that's kind of like if somebody's talking trash, and you're like, I know. Yeah, I am stupid. I don't know. I don't know why I do these things sometimes.
Yeah,
I'm kind of a loser. Interest in it. Yeah, I am kind of a loser.
Yeah.
Man,
I am kind of a loser. Yeah, absolutely. Why do you think I'm here?
Yeah, exactly. So they're not even interested in talking trash anymore. That's so funny. Is there anything else you would like to shout out your channel, shout out what you're doing, any of that stuff?
Yeah, check us on out over at the Golden Feather Tavern. We just wrapped up. I'm sure you all, at least most of you, I know I've seen a bunch of your names over there during it, but we just finished up 2 sessions of a guild summit yesterday, 3 hours long each. It was 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. 12 p.m. Sorry, because we started well before that. Yeah, 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. and then there was 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. It was good stuff. It was good times. Lots of viewpoints. We had 15 different guilds on, and yeah, it was great. It was great times. We, as the Golden Feather, didn't do a lot of talking because we don't run a guild, but we had people on who were much better at that than we are.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, they did most of the talking.
Yeah, and it was great. It was great. From my end, I just want to let you guys know tomorrow at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time, I will have Sonny Ravencourt from the Loreforge podcast on, and he doesn't have a pet topic like Virtek does. That's something he really wants to talk about. So we're just going to be talking about Ashes of Creation, augments, secondary archetypes, PvP, PvE, the Ranger, just whatever comes up. We will obviously be talking about why I would make a much better mayor than him. I don't know why he's running mayoral campaigns when I'm clearly the right choice for mayor. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow. So you guys come out and check that out. Before we get out of here, we are going to raid over. It looks like Theory Forge is going right now. So we're going to raid over into them. So Planendorf says, Sonny, get out, Planendorf! Get out!
Sonny for mayor.
It's sunny for Mario. All right, we're gonna raid over into Theory Forge. I appreciate everybody hanging out tonight. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. Sunny for Virtek. I'm Zillin. We'll see you guys next time.
Take care.
Here we go.
Here we go.
All right. Bye, y'all.